You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. Typhoon Yagi, a borderline Category 5 as it approaches Hainan, China. And now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Live tropical weather bulletin for September 6th. Of course, Yagi is still the main threat right now and is very close to Category 5 status. Indeed, it probably reached Category 5 earlier on, although it does look like it's about to begin a weakening trend now at last, although it is still at least 155 miles per hour right now. Day 98 of the Atlantic hurricane season, and we've got no less than 6 areas of interest active. 3 of those at 30%. Take your pick which one you want to talk about tonight. There is so much going on there, including another area of interest possible next week, exiting Africa. Day 115 in the Eastern Pacific, and we have 2 20% chances still. The Central Pacific still with a small chance for this brief spin up, and that other system way out east, which will be paralleling the coast of Mexico next week, we expect. In the Western Pacific, Super Typhoon Yagi is barreling towards the eastern tip of Hainan. 60% chance out over the eastern part of the Philippine region, and a 70% chance now for that area of interest near Micronesia. Leapy there, a tropical storm yesterday, down to a depression again, and what's left of Hone still traceable. One area of interest in the North Indian Ocean, the Bay of Bengal, a 30% chance that we're giving that one. And that is still expected to sort of move towards the north somewhere. And in the Southwest Indian Ocean, for what it's worth, we've got no areas of interest here. Nothing expected to develop in the next 7 days. So that's pretty much a view there of the whole tropics today. The main feature is obviously Super Typhoon Yagi, which is 152 kilometers only from Hainan, 209 from the town of Wanning on the island, 238 from Haikou, the major city on Hainan, 316 from Zhangjiang, and 712 from Hanoi in Vietnam. A red typhoon warning is in effect for a substantial chunk of Hainan, the eastern part, and there is also some significant orange typhoon warnings as well, extending further out towards the east. Coming back with me right now, my name is Nathan Foy here in the studio, and I'm joined by a couple of people with us tonight to discuss everything that's going on around the wide world of tropics as ever. We have Jose and Zeta. Welcome to both.
Hello.
Hello.
Back again.
We are indeed, and what a powerful typhoon Yagi is turning out to be, looking extremely good in those earlier images. Although the northern side is looking a little bit flaky now, it may be starting its weakening trend, but nonetheless it does look like it's going to be at least a substantial Category 4 landfall by the time it gets there on Hainan. It's moving quite slowly at a speed of about, I think it was 9 miles per hour if I recall. I think it was 9 miles per hour, the latest estimate. And translating those kilometers into miles, it's probably about 10 hours away from landfall at its current speed. Maybe it will speed up a little bit, might bring that landfall a little bit closer, but 10 hours from now, that would obviously put it into the evening hours local time in China. The storm, of course, was eventually, it looked like it would be affecting Hong Kong and Macau, but I think they've gotten away relatively lightly. Certainly, there aren't any big areas of convection over that area that you can see on this imagery. The areas that are being affected then are obviously Hainan, although large parts of the island at the moment, certainly the central part, in between a outer band there and the central core of the storm, but the core is closing in very quickly here. And then over in the Gulf of Tonkin, you can see on the left hand side there's tons of convection blowing up all around that area. and affecting significantly large parts of the coast of Vietnam. Haiphong certainly underneath a lot of that convection, and I would imagine very heavy rainfall. Hanoi just on the edge of all of that as the storm gradually moves westwards, but I expect they'll be getting quite a lot of rain too soon. Well, rainfall expectations are going to push up at above possibly 500 millimeters, if I recall correctly. Maybe not that much, actually, half that. 250 millimeters could be widespread, and maybe in some local areas it could get up and above that. Even in the Philippines, still getting some really substantial thunderstorms over parts of the western coast of Luzon, and some of those areas could still see a further 250 millimeters of rainfall over the next few days. So guys, Yagi, was it a Category 5? I think most people will say yes, but what are your thoughts?
I'd definitely say so. There's definitely some evidence supporting it, as from what I've seen.
Jose?
I mean, after looking at it like a couple times during when I was in school, and I will agree, yeah, it did reach Category 5.
You can see
Probably
it more
like
clearly.
160, 165.
You can see more
One
clearly
of,
on
yeah.
your imagery right now that just
Yeah.
those latest frames, the storm, the northern side is starting to come apart. But really impressive looking eye there in those last few frames. Certainly earlier on there, looking very impressive. And continuing, now moving due west, it was for a long time, it had quite a southerly element to it. But it would appear now that it is going to be slamming straight into Hainan there, probably continuing to move west. I may have said east earlier, west. The eye shape may be starting to degrade there as well, but I wonder what that eye temperature was earlier, Jose. Did you get any numbers on that? It must have been about 20 degrees.
I believe so. The last time I did check, I got around 20. But I mean, I could take a look right now
Yeah.
for that.
Oh, I mean, you can do it through Real Earth there. If you right click inside the eye.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Probably I've never done it before.
Yeah, just press the probe button and that should give you an indication of the eye temperatures. Oh, they've put it in Kelvin. That's really good. But looking at that, I think that's about 12 or 13 degrees Celsius there on that particular frame. Certainly an impressive eye. Anything above about 5 or 10 degrees Celsius is a sure fire way to getting the storm towards Category 5 status. Of course, it needs the cloud tops along with it and the very good appearance around that eye. Well, let's take a look at the JTWC forecast today then. And this is what they've gone with. Their last update was a mere 150 miles per hour. And I believe that is the maximum intensity they've gone with this storm. Now, we have never, in our communications, officially, from our end, put out a Category 5 update, but we're open-minded that it probably was earlier, and now giving it 155. But they've gone a bit lower, 150 miles per hour, still a super typhoon, and from there they expect a bit more pronounced northwesterly turn. Well, that needs to start soon if that forecast is going to be correct. Down to a 130 mile per hour Category 4 by the time it makes landfall, weakening substantially, and according to that forecast, a high-end Category 1 by the time it arrives in Vietnam. Storms just always fail to arrive in northern Vietnam as anything higher than a Category 2. We were talking in our yesterday's live stream, only 2 storms have actually managed to affect sort of like the Hanoi area as Category 2s, and they were Frankie in 1996, which I don't think anyone's heard of until now, and the other one was, oh goodness, I've forgotten now. It was more recent, and I've actually forgotten what the second one was. Damn. Well, anyways, let's take a look at some more imagery. This is how things have been looking. Just getting some early visible images there now as well. Still looking impeccable on that imagery. Gradual movement westwards, closing in on land, and this is obviously a major story. So what's going on the ground in terms of warning information? Well, we've got all the warnings up here from China right now, and as you can see, they have issued red typhoon warnings, which is their highest level, obviously, for large parts of the eastern side of Hainan and the northern side, including those significant towns and cities that we mentioned. Wanning, which is along the east coast, could be very close to the landfall zone, actually, and Haikou, which is the main city on that north coast. Curiously, the southern tip of the Litsu Peninsula has been left as an orange typhoon warning, and yet north of there they've maintained red typhoon warnings for the major city of Zhanjiang and Maoming to the east there as well. Also, orange typhoon warnings further on either side of that, moving eastwards and also westwards to Belhai, and yellow typhoon warnings extending to the border with Vietnam. And look at all these areas that still have yellow typhoon warnings as well, entering the Macau region there too. And blue typhoon warnings extending way inland. That's their lowest level of warning. It goes blue, yellow, orange, red. And then you can see on western Hainan, I'm not sure whether they've got rainfall warnings there on the western side, a red rainfall warning. I'm not sure if they've got typhoon warnings, whether those rain warnings supersede that. I don't know, but clearly the whole island is expected to get at least tropical storm conditions, even on the southern tip. And I would say at least half of the island is prone here to receiving typhoon force winds. So as we've mentioned, at the current rate of travel, the storm is expected to make landfall in somewhere around 10 hours, maybe 9 now. So that would take us to what time local? I'm trying to figure that out here. I think it would be about 6 p.m. Local time in Hainan. That's the best estimate for our projected landfall right now, and that would give it probably on our forecast about a 140 mile per hour landfall when that occurs. And I would say it is a when at this point. It's pretty difficult for the storm in this position to actually end up missing. It won't. So one of Hainan's most exceptional landfalls, it looks like, is on the cards. There's plenty of other stuff going on around the tropics as well. Let's take a little look at the Atlantic, where we have marked 6 areas of interest. I don't think that's ever happened before. The National Hurricane Center have 5, but we've added 1 extra, one for next week, that will be emerging off the coast of Africa. First of all, let's see what's actually tangible, what's active in front of us. And you can see there in the Gulf of Mexico, there's a little disturbance there. The National Hurricane Center, Jose, what are they giving that one?
It's still
10%.
a 10% chance.
10-10.
10%.
Yeah. They also got rid of the Central Caribbean system that's near the Leeward
Western
Islands.
Right.
Western Antilles.
Yeah, look
Whatever
at
you wanna call
that. They've just hop to the 7-day outlook there, just to make things a bit easier for us. Although the satellite imagery is nice. So that Gulf system, the Northern Gulf, we've actually upped that one's chances to 30%, which is interesting. National Hurricane Center is still holding on more to that Southern system. They're giving, what, a 20% on that one? The Southern Gulf of Mexico?
Oh, this one. Yeah, it's still
20%?
still 20.
Yeah, it's 20.
Yeah, it's
0-20.
And we're giving that just a 10%. And then you've got that sort of non-tropical low up there, not far from Bermuda to the northwest. And they're giving that one the highest of any of them, 30% from the National Hurricane Center. We're keeping it at 20 right now. And then you've got all this goings on in the really disorganized stuff. You know, the Atlantic is really struggling to get its game on, get some organized developments. That's really the only thing it is missing. Time and again, it's had opportunities to develop proper low pressure systems, but look at this, it's all just so sloppy. All we need is a well defined circulation, and then it looks like with the conditions, very, very warm sea surface temperatures, huge amounts of fuel, that they would go. But they're just really struggling to get themselves together. So that system there, National Hurricane Center reduced to 0. We're still, I don't think we've even marked that one. It's the little bit on the eastern side of it. Let me just get the little marker here and point to it. Let me find it. Where's my marker? Here it is.
I think it's mostly with the wind shear. Like right now, like there's lots of wind shear, but where the areas where they're marked looks like less wind shear, but I really don't know what's the deal right now with it.
So that area there is what we're giving a 30% chance. We're also still giving a 30% chance. It doesn't look like much right now, but that little thing west of Cape Verde, again, because models are really toing and froing between which of the two actually develops, and GFS at times has been suggesting that both of them will manage it at the same time, and then they'll get caught up in each other, which I'm not sure about. But looking further east there, right into the coast of Africa, not much going on there right now, but some disturbed weather by the looks of things starting to appear, and that will be something to watch next week for potential development near Cape Verde and out over the open Atlantic. But once again, real land threats, not really. You remember last week, or at the start of this week maybe, we were thinking about that Caribbean system. Models were going ape on Category 4 hurricane landfall in Texas, in Louisiana. It was Houston, it was Lake Charles, it was Pensacola. It was going all over the place, and it's ended up being hardly anything at all. So that's how the Atlantic is turning out right now, guys. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I feel like the Atlantic could throw something later on down the road.
Oh, no doubt about it. It definitely
Yeah,
could.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's just, I mean,
it probably could.
yeah. It kind of like almost reminds me of 2020. I mean, not 2022. How it's been quiet for a good while, then all of a sudden, Ian came in,
Ah,
and it's just like insane, and it was unexpected at that time.
Yeah, it also reminds me. I do believe that CSU, Colorado State University, on their new paper they published, I did believe that they said something about activity increasing in the late season.
there is
Yeah.
a chance of that. I'm still hedging bets on a December storm as well, if I'm being honest. So we'll see what
Yeah, we haven't
happens.
had one of those in a while.
Yeah.
We
You
haven't.
just gotta wait and see.
Of course, 2018 as well. Florence was really getting going around now, and then it was Category 4 briefly in the open Atlantic. Then it weakened right down to a tropical storm again, and off it went again. Ended up towards the
Yeah.
U.S. East Coast. That was by like the 14th of September, I think it was, by the time it got there. Here's a
Yeah,
look at.
kind of. Sorry, I was gonna say,
Sorry?
kind of reminds me of 2019 as well. At that time, like it was kind of quiet then.
Well, I mean, come on. Dorian was affecting the U.S.
Yeah,
East Coast
Dorian
right
was
now.
coming in. Yeah, Dorian just came out of nowhere at that time, unexpected.
Sure did. As a
Yeah.
look at the East Pack, you can see there's not a huge amount going on. We're looking for something to develop, spark up off the coast of maybe Guatemala in the coming days. It could be some of the energy from that Atlantic system in the Western Caribbean there, which you can clearly see, but low chances on that. And who knows what might happen there. I don't think I have any other imagery here actually, so let's throw it back to the latest view. In fact, we'll throw it to Jose's view of Yagi there once again, and that latest imagery there showing that the northwestern side has a bit of a problem, and I'm not sure whether that's a bit of dry air intrusion or whether it may well be a start of another eye wall replacement cycle. There was some partial microwave passes earlier, suggesting that it did have concentric eye walls.
I could take out the looks like it kind of increases on the eye temperature. I think the lowest was like at 10 degrees when I last checked. 10 degrees Celsius probably.
And for those wondering, the current ADT estimate on this is a 6.7, which is about 153 miles per hour roughly. I'm a bit surprised by that. And according to that, the ADT, the eye temperature estimate is 17 degrees. I'm just taking a look at what ADT actually peak. This is peak on ADT. Well, no. Earlier on, before that first eye wall replacement cycle, that was the ADT peak, at least using SSEC, when it was 155 miles per hour. It has never reached Category 5 status on the Advanced Dvorak estimates, at least the ones that are being used by Sims and by NOAA. Some other estimates have been at Category 5 strength, and it's certainly been a borderline case. I don't want to say too much because prelim, and we might want to do some reanalysis, but I reckon it was probably a Category 5 earlier, and I think most would agree. We haven't officially gone with that yet, though. You can converse with us on the live stream as well as we watch this storm close in on this hour of coverage. Once we're finished here, we'll be throwing us back to the automated stream, which is available all the time as well. It's been showing the storm minute by minute, really, and you can join the conversation in the chat there too. That will automatically redirect when we're done here. Well, let's take some questions. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. And let me just take a look back and see what we've got so far. The meme god says, what are the water temperatures? Well, around Yagi right now, they must be about 31 degrees Celsius. We'll get a closer look for you in a moment. CVK says, even 2022 had more storms by now than this year in the Atlantic. And Skeletor Titan says, Yagi is definition of a land threat. Logan says, is there going to be a subtropical Francine? Well, I hope not. I don't think so. You're talking about that system near Bermuda. I don't think that's going to happen. It's going to skip and go straight to extratropical in less than 24 hours, I would say. Kissimmee Granite says, Atlantic boom or bust? Oh boy. Well, it's
I don't know if we can comment on that.
well that kind of conjecture there, it's sort of I mean, talk to anyone who experienced Beryl. I mean, that is boom right there. So we've already had the boom, and the real question is whether we get another one. It gets very easy to forget that we have already had a 175 mile per hour Category 5 storm this year in the Atlantic. Really
under our analysis.
Yep, really stretching the climatological limits there at the start of July. All right, as promised, I'll just take you to look at some of the sea surface temperatures surrounding Yagi at this point. Here it is. And you can clearly see that those temperatures are good, but they are actually declining as the storm reaches Hainan. Once it gets to the other side, they're back up again, close to 32 degrees Celsius. Extremely warm all around. And the lowest point there off the Lead-Su Peninsula is around 28 degrees Celsius. So the storm's really not going to run into any trouble in that regard. The main problem it's got here is whatever is causing the problem right now, which is either itself through eye wall replacement cycle maybe, or perhaps it might be some dry air entrainment. wind shear, I have on good authority that it decreased today. It certainly looked that way. And I don't think we're seeing any strong signs of wind shear right now. Just cut back to that imagery. Maybe some on the very peripherals of the storm, but nowhere near the central core. So I think it's looking pretty good from that perspective. And I don't know when wind shear might be rising again. I will just cut to Jose again here whilst we take a look at some of the multi-model diagnostic plots, which is something that I probably should show you more often, but here it is. So this tells us a few things. The first panel, the top left, if I can get it zoomed in a decent way without my face being over half of it. Well, that's the best we'll get there. That shows the intensity forecast of the storm. And what you've got there, all those lines, are different forecast models. The pink one at the very bottom there, that's the European model, which never really gets a handle of the proper storm intensity. Then you've got the red, which is the GFS. Then you've got the LGEM, the purple, the ship's model in sort of maroon there, the HFSA, which is one of the hurricane models in trying to figure out what color that is, sort of like dark gold. The HWRF is in the blue, and the CTCX is in the green there, and you can see, and the grey one is the JTWC's official forecast. So all of them there up in the mid to high range category 4 area. Indeed, the HFSA model actually there has a brief category 5 peak just as it makes landfall. It can't be fully ruled out, but looking at it on satellite imagery right now, I think, well, pretty much we probably can. Interestingly, some of those models are showing that perhaps there's a secondary peak there, a brief one, before it reaches Vietnam, an actual increase of about 10 or maybe even 15 miles per hour, which at that kind of intensity would be a bit of a surprise. Maybe not actually, because it goes all the way down to category 1 according to those forecasts before going back to category 2. But I would say it's much more likely that the storm will ramp down more slowly, category 3 over the island, category 2 in the Gulf of Tonkin, and then down to maybe high-end category 1 for that Vietnam landfall. After that, of course, it weakens very quickly once it moves inland over Vietnam. There's the wind shear forecast here, what the models are all saying on the wind shear. And when you tally the storm intensity with what they're showing on wind shear, you start to see a correlation. So near zero right now. In fact, it's got the best environment ever on that forecast at this moment in time. Oh, well, no, not at this moment. This is a little bit old now. That was about 12 hours ago. But it's still quite good, hovering at 5 to 10 knots and staying good for about 18 to 24 hours until it increases again into the moderate range. So wind shear is not really going to be the problem. Sea surface temperatures, not much going on there either. 28 degrees plus, no issue. Relative humidity looks good as well. Look at that, it's in the 70s. So I don't know whether it is a bit of stray dry air or whether it may be another IWO replacement cycle. There may be radar available. I'll go and check in a moment. And there's some of the forecast tracks. I've no idea what the GFS is doing there. Looks like it takes the remnants back out over the Gulf of Tonkin, but I really don't think there'll be anything left by then. And then you've got some of the other models, HWRF going quite far north there, but pretty much all of them now take it straight over the Gulf of Tonkin there and could get quite close to those major cities in Vietnam. Well, that is certainly interesting. What do you guys think about those forecasts, if you have any thoughts on that?
Very interesting.
All right.
The peak winds there. I mean, I was expecting like somewhat like that. Sea surface temperature, somewhat almost, but with the GFS, that was something else.
All right, here we go. We do have radar imagery of the storm here, and you can see that movement may have actually turned slightly north after all. What is that showing? I'm not really sure. Western side perhaps a little bit frail, but it's northern on the satellite. It's concentric eye walls, so maybe that is, yeah, the outer eye wall getting a little bit bolder there on that imagery. I think we may be seeing the start of another eye wall replacement cycle looking at this radar here. And that would be a pretty big new eye if it goes through with that. Pretty big. But you can see just how close it is getting to land now. At the when we were prepping for the stream, it was 152 kilometers. Let me just get a position update now. So in the middle of our stream here, the distance to land is now estimated to be 141 kilometers. So probably about an hour and a half is the amount of time it's been that it's gotten itself about 12 kilometers closer. Not directly closer though, because of its angle. So it's moving a bit faster than that in real terms. So yeah, I would say we're pretty much on here for something like a 6 p.m. landfall by the time it gets over there to Hainan. Already half past the hour, guys. Is there anything else in the tropics you wanted to look at whilst we have an opportunity, maybe?
One thing I definitely want to look at is that 18Z GFS storm.
Oh, we will.
Yes. Oh,
We will.
yes.
Long range.
Oh dear, that can't be good.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, the long ranges.
Well, we
Yeah,
will.
it's just that models have been very, very consistent on it. Even different models have been, other than just the GFS.
Alright, well, if that's a reason to tune in for that in a few minutes, then I'm sure you will. Well, take a look at the rest of the Western Pacific then, and you'll see very congested amounts of cloud there over the northern Philippine region and out over towards, eventually stringing along towards tropical depression now, tropical depression Leapy, which was a storm that was named yesterday, and probably it was a brief tropical storm. Now looks very much worse for wear there near the top of the screen, and looks to be already diminishing and probably down to a remnant low later today. Meanwhile, look further south, and all of that disorganized action, a very large common low pressure area really, and all of these storms that are going on down there will end up trying to congregate around that broader low pressure area. Whether they're successful or not, it's a big question mark, but we are giving a 60% chance for something in that to become a tropical cyclone in the next 7 days. It might not be pretty, but it may well get to tropical cyclone status, and from there, goodness knows where it's going to end up. It could be anywhere along central southern Japan, through the Ryukyu Islands, or possibly down towards Taiwan. Really depends exactly where the dominant low ends up being. Indeed, already, in fact, you can possibly see where the center of this broad area is. There's a bit of circulation going on here in a clearing. All around this area, it looks like that might be the center of this very, very large, broader low pressure area with more distinct low pressures in those little systems along the edge of it. So really interesting situation there. If anything does form, it may well be extremely broad. Look southeast over the Micronesian islands, and you'll also see a few little flare-ups of thunderstorms as well. Something in this is that 70% chance. Really strong model support. It looks like it will become a substantial storm or typhoon, although I've noticed that the latest model runs have actually backed off a little bit, at least with its intensity. But whether it actually forms, that is looking pretty solid here. 70% chance is what we're giving it. You might be able to see the North Indian Ocean from here as well. There it is, the Bay of Bengal. A few little flare-ups there too, especially on the southern side of what would be that low-pressure center if it has one. It's going to be another broad monsoonal messy system there, of course, which is what we often see at this time of year in the Indian Ocean. Could become a brief tropical cyclone. It will eventually be moving sort of in general northerly direction, maybe northwest. Could make landfall in Odisha and then move inland over India and die off very quickly. But of course, the main story, which is right in the middle of all of those things that we've been discussing, is Typhoon Yagi, which, if you've just joined us, is a super typhoon. We're giving it winds of 155 miles per hour. We speculate that it probably reached Category 5 status earlier, but we have yet to make that official, at least from where we stand. Of course, the real officials, the JMA, gave it the violent rating earlier on, and a pressure of... last I saw it was 915. I don't know if they went any further than that. Probably not. And the JTWC only went as far as 150 miles per hour with their storm estimate. Oh wow, so JMA are giving this 9... Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. 915 millibars. They're still expecting it to strengthen further to 905 millibars when it makes landfall in Hainan. That would be absolutely extraordinary, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen because there is some grumblings within the storm here, and it looks like there is some temporary weakening. How about that for a forecast, guys? 905 millibars at landfall. What do you think of that?
That would be a cataclysm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, absolutely. Well, let's take a look at some more comments right now, and then a few minutes after that, we will look at what the GFS has to offer, and then some of the other models afterwards. I may have missed your comment if you sent it quite a while ago. I'm just picking a point and starting from it. Hone is in the chat apparently, and they said, what do we think of future Francine, Gordon, Helene, Isaac, Joyce, Kirk? You may as well just go through the whole naming list, right? I mean, I see what you've done. You think all 6 of them will get named? Well, I think one at best,
Lord.
probably. We never want to pre-name, but you know, the Atlantic is having its sort of busy period, but yet struggling to come up with the goods with actual tropical storms.
True. I mean, we exactly don't know when the Atlantic is going to decide to just be active right now, so it's just like a wait and see. We still got like 2 months to go before the Atlantic finish, but who knows that probably there can be an off-season storm.
Well, I mean, people forget that, I don't know, from what we've seen, some of the discussions that have been going on, you know, a lot of people already giving up, I don't want to say hope because it makes people sound like they want to see all this carnage, but that's sort of what it is, that they're giving up on the season. When there's still a long way to go. Some of the strongest storms in Atlantic history have occurred in October, for instance. And of course, one of the last ones to do that, of course, Hurricane Michael, which was devastating for Florida in the second week of October 2018. And of course, I'm sure there's been some more since that I've already forgotten about. And November storms, like in 2020.
Ida Iota.
It's a different kettle of fish, probably, but...
don't forget Nicole. Well, Nicole was a Cat 1, either way, but that was like a rare...
It wasn't very...
wasn't it?
Yeah, Nicole was...
It wasn't, like... Yeah, Nicole... It wasn't terribly impactful, but it was pretty impactful.
I mean, it was kind of decent impactful. I mean, there was a lot of damages, like, along the coast of, like, you know, beaches, where some houses been collapsed at that time because of erosion.
was a minimal Category 1 hurricane.
Minimal category.
Glowing Rose says, what about analogs for a 2007-like season? I've not been looking at analogs really since I did the forecast at the start of the year, so I don't really know. Beryl sort of gave you that 2007 feel, didn't it, really?
Oh, yeah, it did.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know what to say about that. Not Mr. Popular says, any analogs for Yagi that we're thinking of? They were thinking of Hagapit 2008 and Crovan 2003. That was the storm I was thinking of earlier that passed close to Hanoi as a Category 2, Crovan.
A lot of people have been bringing up Ramazan as an analog.
Yes, but it is now clearly much further south than Ramazan was.
Yeah.
So maybe Crovan, certainly for the latter stage of its track, that will probably really come into play. Apart from that, I am not sure. Andrew reckons, according to forecast models, there's a big typhoon coming in the next few days. We'll be looking shortly. Samuel says, what Category 5s have existed in the South China Sea officially and unofficially? I'll have to grab all of the records to figure that out. There's been a handful.
I'm not that much of a history person in the West Pacific. I'm mostly in the Atlantic, but I feel like this is the first Category 5 I've seen in this part of the sea. Like, this is actually the first Category 5 I ever saw.
Well, Ramazan did it.
Probably I never heard of those names back then, but probably till now I'm listening to it.
And I'm trying to remember, was there like another storm fairly recently, which I can't remember now, that may have also done it? I'm all at sea with what I'm thinking about. Anyways, and where are the live cams? I did have a little look. There are some live cameras on Hainan. I think they're on the south coast though, and inland, so there wasn't very much to look at. And even at this point, I don't think there'd be much to see, because the main part of the storm is still offshore. They're probably getting some elevated winds now, but certainly in terms of the really heavy rainfall, that's still yet to come. A lot of people talking about models, a lot of people talking about 2007. Any Bay of Bengal invests, and does it have a chance to form? We covered that. 30% chance we're giving it still at this point. Will this hurricane season supercharge 2025, assuming it is a neutral phase of ENSO because of the lack of activity? Well. That is a really good question. Those sea surface temperatures, they continue to get untapped. They continue to be well above average. If that's still the case next year, then once again, we're staring down another barrel, aren't we?
Mm.
So there we go. And I didn't press the button I was supposed to have pressed 5 minutes ago, so just going to wait a little bit longer there for those models right now. Let's just take a look at some other viewpoints of Yagi. There's some more imagery there with some really high cloud tops into the minus 80s at times. And there's the Zaire imagery as well, showing the storm looking very impressive indeed. Very warm eye, moving westwards, possibly a hint of north now. And then landfall expected soon in Hainan. Probably in about 8 or 9 hours. Christian is also with us right now as well. Welcome aboard.
Yes, hello. I've had to mute my microphone because I'm at Sydney Airport right now. How's the stream going?
Fine. Is this a social call, Christian?
Yeah, I just wanted to drop in for like a minute.
Okay. What do you think of Typhoon Yagi there? Was it a Category 5?
I haven't been keeping an eye on it, so I have no idea what it's been up to right now. All I know is it's really high on Seacoast.
Yep. It certainly is a very high threat level from this storm. No surprise there. Very high populations involved as well with the rain and wind.
Good.
All right. Well, thanks for popping in, Christian. We'll go take a look at the models now at this point. This is what we have in front of us then. This is the GFS looking across the Atlantic as ever. First of all 6 of these systems. Let me just draw them out for you. Number 1, this potential subtropical system. The one here in the Gulf. The one that's approaching the Gulf. The one over here, NHC gave up on that one. We don't have that on our list. The one we do have is this little area here. And the other one we have is that one over there. And the one next week will be emerging out of here. So, really remarkable Atlantic with 6 areas of interest. Well, what happens to them? Let's have a look. So very quickly, that northern system turns post-tropical very quickly, within 24 hours. Off it goes towards Canada, delivers it really some substantial storm force winds there, non-tropical though. Then we get systems trying to form in the Gulf, fails ultimately. Look out east across the main development region of the Atlantic. Look at these 2 systems trying to form at the same time. It's actually the eastern one that overtakes it. Nope, it's the western one again. They're toing and froing. And then that other system behind it there, that's that 20% that we gave, becomes a substantial hurricane. We were talking about this yesterday. Could that be one of the big ones this season? There it is, moving through Puerto Rico as a major hurricane by the looks of things there. That's on the 17th. So it is still quite far away. That is 11 days from now. And then after that, what does it do? It moves on, really hits Dominican Republic as well. That's another landfall. And then scraping through the Bahamas, weakens a bit, and then strengthens again.
Turks and Caicos as well.
Turks and Caicos, and then it rebounds into the Outer Banks as a substantial Category 2 hurricane at least there, and a much larger one as well. So there you go. That could be one of the bigger Atlantic storms of the season if that happens, but most of that is in the long range, Zeta.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. That landfall in Puerto Rico that I just saw in the models just kind of reminds me of Hurricane Maria back in 2017.
Same time of year.
It looks the exact landfall. I'm not sure if it's a little bit more, but it just reminds me of Maria at this time.
Big Guadalupe landfall, and then straight into Puerto Rico. St. Croix getting some really strong winds there as well. That's 11 days out, everyone, so I wouldn't get too concerned about that just yet. East Pac, that potential system out there, there it is, trying to develop a little bit better than it did on yesterday's model run. Very broad, hits the southern tip of the Baja California Peninsula in 7 days, and then drifts inland there. There it is. Tries to become a hurricane, doesn't quite get there. Okay, Central Pacific System. This is going to be very short-lived if it forms. There it is, and that's the chance gone. It's gone. That's it. Doesn't look like that's going to happen anymore. Obviously, the big business of Yagi, of course, most of it now is not so much the forecast, it's what the storm actually does. Because we've seen pretty much all of it now. It's pretty much locked in what happens next. Very powerful landfall. GFS underdoing it as usual. That is probably a mid-range Category 4 at least. Could even be a bit stronger than that. Moving through Gulf of Tonkin, landfall, northern Vietnam, just north of Haiphong, I think. And then moving inland very quickly, dying off very quickly there as well. Oh look, there it is, remnant low. That is actually still Yagi appearing again on the 11th and trying to have a second stint as a cyclone and still milling about Hainan as a remnant low on the 14th. Oh dear.
That is very interesting.
Just won't give it up. There's Leapy up there off the east coast of Japan, actually showing tropical storm force winds there. Moving off, turning post-tropical very quickly.
The thing Yagi was doing in the long range kind of reminds me of some of the earlier models for Debbie
Ah,
and Shanshan as well.
yeah, yeah. And then watch very closely this very large area here. The big low pressure from all of these little systems that are all around that area eventually tries to become a tropical cyclone out of it. There's a GFS. Looks like only a tropical depression affecting the coast of Taiwan. Later on, nope, don't want to do any scribbles. Later on, this area down here near the Micronesian Islands, yesterday's model run showed it becoming a very powerful typhoon. This time, not so much, at least not to begin with. Moving through Guam there is a weak tropical storm on the 10th. That's not far away. And then shooting northwards. And that's actually going to Japan this time. There it is, Kyushu. It's another Shanshan. It really is, but weaker. That's probably category 2 at least there. Much smaller in size. Literally doing another Shanshan. And then in the very long range, look at this, some enormous systems. Another one in South China. Look at that. That is absolutely... that is something else. You know, the size of that thing... that's let me just check this. That's a tropical storm wind
It's gigantic.
That's a tropical storm wind field of approximately 1,800 kilometers.
Sandy 2.0.
So that there is actually considerably larger than Tip. So I don't think that's going to happen somehow.
Probably not.
No, I highly doubt it.
And becomes
but
a
that's
typhoon
like the
there as
biggest
well.
typhoon I've ever seen.
You know what? That probably
And
would
it's only
be
969 millibars.
that probably would be a record largest storm in the Westpac if that's just the craziest thing. Well, there we go. Look at the Indian Ocean then, Bay of Bengal. This little system again trying to form. Doesn't have much of a chance by the looks of things. Oh no, something forming again there. Well, that's the same system or a different one, I'm not sure. But there it is, a tropical storm there on the 10th, affecting the coast of Bangladesh, and then moving inland, dying off. Okay. Southern Hemisphere, for what it's worth. Not much in the southern Indian Ocean, South Pacific. There are still rumblings of that potential storm down there. There it is now. Looks like it's fully extratropical. And let's check the South Atlantic. You never know when you might see something strange there, but not this time.
Mm-hmm.
And the Mediterranean, sometimes September can be a boom month over there as well. But not much here, I don't think. No.
What is that?
I don't know. Let's quickly delve into the rainfall expectations there from the GFS as well. This is the 7-day rainfall total. Look, once again, residual rainfall affecting the Philippines to a pretty large amount, more than the typhoon itself. Up to 30 inches there, and even higher further north. That's over 700 millimeters, getting on for 800 actually. Where the typhoon is going, we're looking at significant rainfall amounts here as well, up towards 20 inches, 250 millimeters, 500 millimeters actually. I keep getting those conversions wrong. 500 millimeters, and you can see inland, stretching quite far inland as well. Some really high rainfall amounts, 400 millimeters possibly, for large chunks of southern China and northern Vietnam. Wow, really high amounts of rain there. Jose, I think you've got some of the other models, have you? Or you did earlier?
Yes. I was just looking at the same thing you were just looking at earlier.
Sure.
But I was just gonna ask.
Looking at that.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, what is the storm surge gonna be for Hainan? I can't say that name.
Hainan.
Hainan.
No, not Hainan. Hainan, the island of Hainan, from Super Typhoon Yagi. That right?
Yeah. For the storm surge, I can't even say these names.
Well, with a storm like this, I would certainly expect up to 20 feet of storm surge potentially.
I'm just a little worried about this area right here where, well, I mean, looking at the winds, I mean,
Uh-huh.
probably, well, I'm still like, like, because sometimes when I see areas like this, I'm just worried about like storm surge, like getting pushed, like onshore. Like the
Yeah.
way how it looked like in, well, Typhoon Haiyan. The way,
No,
I think it
Typhoon
was,
Yagi.
well, no, the other Typhoon
Oh, the
Haiyan
actual
back
Hainan.
in, yeah, the actual Haiyan.
Okay.
I think it was 2013-ish, I think.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah, it was
2013.
2013
Yeah, how like it was
November.
I forgot which direction the winds were going, and it was like the area where it was near storm surge, like all that water got pushed up because of the bay. So it kind of like reminds me of that almost. So that's why I'm a little concerned about the storm surge.
Let's quickly go and look at some of the other models. Here's the European model showing what's going on with that 30% AOI. Once again, post-tropical quite quickly. Some of those other areas of interest as well. But what's notable on this is that in the later part of the run, there you can see that 20% that we've given for next week emerging again, becoming a fully fledged cyclone there, quite far north as well, emerging out of Africa. It goes through Cape Verde and then on over the Atlantic, and who knows where it goes from there. That's day 10, so we'll see. European model for the Westpac. Let's see what we've got here. So there's Yagi, of course, strengthening a little bit further before landfall, but I'm not sure looking at satellite. Then weakening a bit. Could still be a strong category 2 when it arrives in Vietnam, and then in it goes. What happens after this? Well, there's that other system trying to become a substantial storm, but failing ultimately there on that European model. Let's quickly go to the hurricane models, the HWRF for Yagi. There it is, initializing the storm with a pressure of 923 and a wind speed of 145 miles per hour. Any strengthening before landfall? No, it stays quite constant and then quickly starts weakening just as it makes landfall. So that's still a strong category 4 landfall right there, I would bet. And then continuing into the Gulf of Tonkin. Oh, look at that. That is a substantial strengthening phase there. We haven't seen anything like that. If that happens, that would be a turn up for the books. Weakens to a Cat 2 and then back to a probably 4 there before hitting the coast of China near the border with Vietnam. That would be something pretty extraordinary if that happened. HAFS-A model is the other one that we look at. There it is, initializing the storm at 9:15 and a pressure of a wind of 140 and staying pretty constant as well up until landfall there. So according to that model, again a high-end category 4 landfall. Oh, and that moves back up north as well and strengthens. 934 millibar landfall there, right on the border between China and Vietnam. Moves into Vietnam there, weakens very quickly, but that is, again, extraordinary. That's at least a moderate category 4, if not a high-end category 4 there for that landfall. That would be absolutely devastating. That would blow apart any modern records for a storm intensity in that area if that happens. But the other models we're seeing generally supporting the idea that it will weaken by some distance by the time it gets there. We are pretty much out of time. Let's go and have a quick new look at the storm on the latest imagery. Let's just refresh this one first. Look at those latest frames, really not looking as good as it did earlier at all. The eye's still looking good. The eye wall, though, big gap there now on that northern side. And here's another view once again. But the storm is still getting closer to the coast, obviously. Moving at approximately 9 miles per hour. That's 15 kilometers per hour. And let's just have one more look at the radar. Just refresh this radar imagery. Any further signs that could be an eye wall replacement cycle. It's still hard to tell looking at that, but it certainly looks like the outer eye wall has gotten a lot more well established in those latest frames. It looks like an eye wall replacement cycle beckons for this storm. Well, what an incredible storm it is. Final thoughts from the team quickly, guys.
I'm just really hoping that everyone in Hainan, China, and I know Hainan
Vietnam.
is part of China, and Vietnam.
Yeah.
I hope they're all prepared and staying safe right now.
Yeah.
Alright then, later on after this stream finishes, it will redirect you straight to our automated stream so you can find out more information and watch it live on our feed. But now let's take a look at what happened on this day. It was September 6, 2008 when we had Hurricane Ike near its prime intensity as a Category 4. Of course, Ike was still strong, but nowhere near this strength when it arrived in Texas the next week. But it was hitting the Turks and Caicos Islands today as a very powerful Category 4 and then moved on to Cuba. We also had Tropical Storm Hainan near Florida and Josephine, which had just formed near Cape Verde. It was all the Atlantic's day back in 2008. There were no other systems active. Well, back to today then. The next name in the Atlantic is Francine. In the Eastern Pacific, it's Ileana. And in the Central Pacific, it is Iona. 45 storms so far in 2024. We are code red for Yagi. With the formation of Lipi, the next name now is Bebinka. In the Western Pacific, the North Indian Ocean, it's Dana. And still a chance that we'll see that this week. Meanwhile, in the Southern Hemisphere, the next name in the Australian region is Robin. Southwest Indian Ocean, it's Ansha first up. And in the South Pacific, the next name is Pitta. That's it for tonight. We'll be back again with another live tropical weather bulletin tomorrow night.
Become an Ultimate Fan today.